I want to kind of start us out by just situating ourselves geographically for this project. So we are working for this project across the entire Lake Carmi watershed. I know when I think of Lake Carmi, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the land along the lake itself. But when we're thinking about phosphorus entering the lake, we also have to think about the entire land area where the water and the snow that land on that land are going to eventually reach the lake. And because there's a bunch of streams that flow across the land and eventually hit that lake, it means that the area that we care about is bigger than the lake shore itself. So here on this map, you can see the watershed outlined in red, and that just gives you an idea. It's more than just the lake. It's actually a pretty big area, but it's also, not necessarily the entire town of Franklin. So this is the area that we're thinking or that we're planning to work in. And some of the major streams that we care about in this area include Marsh Brook, Alder Run, Dewing Brook, and Sandy Bay Brook, although there are many others. And another piece of background information that I'm sure many of you who have been involved in Lake Carmi work for a while already know, but just want to get us all on the same page. So algae blooms in the lake, what causes them? The shortest answer is excess phosphorus, although when there's warm temperatures and often still air that doesn't have a lot of wind like we have in the summertime, that can really set up conditions for algae blooms to happen. But when we're thinking about what actions we can take to decrease the blooms, the most important thing is to decrease the amount of phosphorus that gets into the lake. Phosphorus is a natural plant nutrient, naturally in soil. It's not, a made-up chemical or anything like that. It is a normal and natural plant nutrient, but when there's too much of it, it can cause algae blooms in the lake. And something that's really important to know about phosphorus is that it is very sticky. It likes to stick to soil particles. So anytime we have a lot of soil erosion, that can be a potential source of phosphorus to the lake. And so later on, when we talk about all the best management practices that we're interested in for this project, you'll notice that a lot of them have to do with stopping erosion. And that's why. Because when we have erosion, phosphorus can be stuck to that soil, and that's how it's going to get into Lake Carmi. Yeah. I know there's a lot happening on such a tiny screen.
There you go.
Beautiful. Yeah, so some of the sources of phosphorus that we're interested in and hope to address with best management practices include soil from eroding stream banks, lake shorelands, as well as fields. We're concerned about stormwater runoff, which can carry phosphorus both in a dissolved form and also in the soil itself. We care about nutrient runoff from farms, but also from lawns and other areas of land. Septic systems can be a source of phosphorus, as well as legacy phosphorus that's basically sitting in the bottom of the lake and groundwater. But we're not really going to deal with those last two with this project. I also want to call out all of the other current work that's happening in the Lake Carmi watershed. So the project that I'm about to describe to you is, you might notice, not narrowly focused, but it doesn't cover every single thing. And that's because there's so much work that's currently happening in this watershed. So in terms of agricultural work, University of Vermont Extension, the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, and the Natural Resources Conservation Services have all been doing a ton of work with farmers across the watershed, doing things like getting a manure injector so that manure nutrients aren't lost to the water, as well as helping farmers adapt practices that prevent erosion and prevent nutrient losses. There's also the Lake Carmi coordination team who manage the crisis response plan and critical pathways projects. And these are basically high priority projects that are going to help reduce phosphorus into the lake across agriculture, natural resources, from roads, stormwater, as well as managing the lake aerator. So they're doing a ton of work in many different areas. And then there's also the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, who is doing a road erosion inventory on Lake Carmi private roads, and also working on, I think, starting construction and planning for the highest prioritized roads. So that's kind of the context in which we're doing our particular work. So our project goals are to fill some of these gaps that exist in the Lake Carmi water quality landscape. And we're specifically really interested in 3 different sectors, which I will tell you more about soon. We're looking at natural resources, agriculture, and shoreland/lake-wise. So what we're going to do with this project, step 1, we are inventorying the existing best management practices in these 3 sectors. And if that doesn't make sense, basically we're looking at what projects have already been done here to restore the Lake Carmi watershed. We're also going to be evaluating how those projects are. So looking at what's working well and what might not be working as planned. Once we have an idea of what's already been done, we want to plan for the future and identify what new projects can be done and prioritize those projects. So figure out what are our opportunities and what are our best opportunities? What should we be working on first, and what's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck in terms of phosphorus reductions? And then,
would you say again the 3 categories of interest?
I'm going to get to that in the next slide. So if you just hold on for 1 second. And for the highest priority best management practice projects, we'll be doing some conceptual designs. And so that's going to basically give us an idea of where specifically we can get started. I lied, it's actually in 2 slides. So I think I've said the term BMP, or best management practice, like a million times by now. And in case that's a term that's not familiar to you, best management practices are actions that we know are effective for protecting water quality. And the goal of these practices are to prevent erosion and prevent nutrient-rich runoff from reaching Lake Carmi. And these practices can be done in a variety of different places. They can take place on residential properties, they can take place on your camps, can take place on public land and roads, as well as farms. And some examples of practices that we're really interested in for this project include rain gardens, planting trees and shrubs near streams, maintaining dirt roads so that they're not eroding and getting into streams in the lake, making sure that lakefront property is as vegetated as possible to help hold that soil in, making sure that streams and ditches have access to a floodplain so that floods aren't taking out infrastructure and also causing a lot of erosion, and making sure that culverts where streams cross roads are big enough and not another source of erosion. For this specific project, we're looking at BMPs in 3 different sectors. So the first one is natural resources, and what that means in this context is looking at restoring and improving wetlands in the watershed, as well as restoring and improving streams, and making sure that all of our streams have sufficient vegetation along the stream banks. Because having vegetation along streams really helps hold in the stream bank soil and prevents erosion. In the agricultural sector, we're also looking at restoring and improving wetlands, streams and ditches, and streamside vegetation. But instead of looking at doing that on public lands or residential lands, we're looking at doing it in agriculture. So it's really important to know for this project that we are not looking at the required agricultural practices and other field and farmstead practices for this specific project. And it's not because we don't care about that, it's because many wonderful people have been working on that for a long, long time. So we're not going to duplicate that work. And then for lakeshore and lake-wise, We're looking at making sure that shorelines are vegetated, that there are rain gardens and other home stormwater practices in place, making sure that driveways are in good shape and crowned. Basically, anything that falls under the shore, recreation area, driveway, or structure and septic categories. If you've had a lake-wise assessment before, those are the categories you're assessed on. And if you hadn't had a lake-wise assessment before, we would love to hear from you, because we'd love to do that for you as a part of this project. Just an overview of the project timeline. So we're here early summer. Yeah, we're still in early summer. The solstice just happened. It feels like it's midsummer because it's been hot for so long. We are currently in step 1. We are hosting the kickoff meeting to review the work plan. The next thing we'll be doing in early summer is forming our project team, and I'll tell you more about that in 1 second. Throughout the summer and fall, we're going to be doing this work to identify all of the existing BMPs in these sectors that I just talked about. So I've been doing that through a lot of computer work, but we also would love to get out into the field. If you're willing to host us on your property, we'll take a look at the great projects that I'm sure people have been doing to take care of the lake. And we want to also, with these field visits, kind of take a look and see how everything's working and get an idea of what practices and kinds of projects are working really well and where we want to kind of target our future efforts. Throughout the winter of this year, we'll be looking for new best management practice opportunities and working on a prioritization matrix, basically a way to figure out what are our highest priorities and what's going to be the most effective projects to prioritize in the future. And we'll be working with landowners throughout the winter to get your permission to move forward on any high priority projects. And then in the spring and summer of next year, we're hoping to move forward on those concept designs, and we'll have a big list of potential projects throughout the watershed and to project reporting things that happen at the end. So we would love to have you, your neighbors, anyone you know, town representatives, all other members of the Lake Association, other people you know who use the lake, farmers, landowners, water resources professionals who work in this area, and basically anyone else with an interest in what's going on in this watershed to be a part of our project team. Team involvement can be really flexible. You can contribute to this project in so many different ways. Some of the ways that you can be involved include sharing your knowledge about existing or planned BMP projects. So if like your whole neighborhood or street put in rain gardens together last year, we want to know about that. And if your neighbors all would like to do some kind of project in the future, like working on your road or working on your driveways, we also would love to know about those plans. If you've done a lot of work on your property and you would like to let us see it, we would love to see that. And also, if you have streamside property and you think your stream bank is eroding and you'd like someone to come take a look and tell you the opportunities there might be to help address that, we'd love to see that too. So kind of where you have either done best management practice work in the past or are interested in trying something out in the future, if you're willing to have us take a look, we'd love to be there. We're not mean. And if you can connect us with other owners and residents who might have projects that they're interested in doing, like if your neighbor has a great stream that they've, I don't know, mentioned to you that they want to see vegetated. I don't know if people talk about that, but you know, please connect us with them. Making connections on the ground is one of the hardest parts about this work. And so helping us get a sense of who might be interested in doing some future best management practices, or who you know has been doing in the past. That can be really helpful. And if you have opinions and ideas for how we should be prioritizing our future projects, we would also love to get that feedback from you. This is your lake. These are your camps in your neighborhoods. We are not here to tell you what you should be doing. We're here to listen and get a sense of how you've already been taking care of the lake and how you want to see that care proceed in the future.
Just to build off that, we are completely non-regulatory. So we don't report back to the state. Things look wonky, it's all very voluntary. So always like to make that very clear.
Yes, very important. Yeah, so you can invite us to come out. We will not.
That's not our job. There's requirements that we can't do that. So,
and we don't want to do that. Right. Expressly not what we are here for. Yeah, so we've gloriously made it to the end of the part where I talk at you and tell you about all the things we want to do. Like I said, this project is about you all and how you want to see work in the watershed proceed. So with that in mind, does anyone have any questions before we move into a discussion?